Good morning YouTube and welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to do an unboxing and an install of the Super ATV Rhino axles. So if it's your first time stopping by, do me a favor, click that subscribe button. If you're returning, thank you so much. So let's go ahead and I'm going to unbox the Super ATV Rhino axles. I'm going to tell you why I got them and then we're going to do an install. Should be a super easy, fast video. So let's get to the unboxing. Alright, so here are the Super ATV axles that I had ordered. I wasn't going to order them initially, and if you watch Super ATV, they have these things on sale all the time. I got them for 15% off free shipping, so I saved 60 bucks. Now these are the front axles. So let's go ahead. Let's get them unboxed. Okay, so I got it uncut. Let's open her up. Let's have this one back. And what do we get? We get... Oh, it's heavy. Nothing else in there. So we're going to keep that box for the old axle for now. And we will... And bam, so look at there, you have a new cotter pin and a new O-ring, and there is a new castle nut. So let me get this out. So there we have it, the Super ATV Rhino axle. Make sure you look inside your box, so they come with a new O-ring and castle nut. So, man, that's massive. And look at the articulation on that. So on these axles, we're typically not going to break the shaft here on the Pioneer. The Pioneer just doesn't have as much torque and horsepower is required to. Usually when you're going to break one of these axles, it's going to be at either end at the CV, and you're usually going to break the collar. So in here there's a collar with holes in it, and there's big ball bearings that ride around, and around the collar when they put the holes in the ball bearings, that's usually what's going to snap. It's going to take all the force and break, which is great because you can buy a rebuild kit for these. I think the Honda factory rebuild kit is like 50 bucks in Rocky Mountain ATV. I don't know what the Super ATV one is. Now when you start getting to the high powered machines, the long travel machines, that's in my experience more when you're going to break this shaft. I'm not saying the Pioneer can't break it, but when you get this shaft longer and you get those high horsepower machines, they're going to put more torque and more twist on them, and you're going to start seeing them snap off. Usually in your day-to-day driving, you're not going to break an axle. It's when you're out in the rocks, you're out somewhere and you hit something with a skinny pedal, you know, all the way down, and that wheel catches. And as it's spinning, it's going to hit a rock, a tree stump, something, and it's going to catch and it's going to pop this axle. So that's usually when you're going to break an axle. If you're real careful, you're not going to have much of an issue. So the question is, why am I putting the Super ATV axles on the Pioneer when the stock axles aren't broken, the stock axles aren't leaking, there's nothing wrong with the front ones? Well, there's a couple reasons. So the first reason is, I got them on sale because, well, I was going to do it eventually, and I like to do stuff preventatively. So the big reason is I'm running a lift at the front, and when I extended the A-arms, I put the Super ATV forward A-arms. Not only am I pushing that CV axle down, but I'm pushing it forward too. If you go onto the Super ATV website, they say if you're running a lift and their A-arms, you should run these because you'll bind the stock axles. Now if you go back to the install video, these axles are not binding. We're really close because if I moved them another, half inch, 3/4 of an inch, they're in the binding zone. So I went ahead, I got these 15% off, I saved 60 bucks. I'm gonna install them. So I did take my calipers and I measured the shaft here. This shaft is 1/8 of an inch bigger than the stock shaft. The front to the rear shafts on these is like a 1/4 inch difference. But now that's this main part here. Let me show you. These stock ones, I measured right here, and it gets a little bit bigger out here. But if you go to the rear, I measured here, but look, it's necked down. I don't know how well the camera shows that on both sides. And there's actually a groove right here, which I'm wondering if they did like the old pickups, put a groove in there for it to twist off. So this is your fusible link. So I'm replacing the front drive axles just solely as preventative maintenance. Now here's an interesting fact for you who don't keep up with the Pioneer axles or just unaware. The front axles are interchangeable right to left. The rear axles are not interchangeable. There's actually a different part number, and the limited research I did was the rear differential is offset and one axle shaft is longer than the other, which is really a bummer because now let's say you're out doing something, if you wanted to carry spare axles with you, you got to carry 3 axles. If they had made the rear axles the same, you'd only have to carry 2. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get this thing jacked up, we're gonna get the tires off, and we're gonna do the axle swap. We're gonna take these stock axles, I'm gonna throw them back in the boxes right now where the Rhino axles came in, but I am going to show you a different storage solution here in the future. So let's go ahead and let's get that done. Wheels and tires are off, so how are we gonna get this axle out? Now if we were to break it on the trail, the common point is this outer CV right here. We would just yank the boot out, the whole axle shaft out, and leave this in because, well, it's bolted in by this 30mm nut. As long as it's not doing any damage flopping around. So how are we gonna do this? We're gonna go ahead and pull the shock and the top ball joints. And then what we'll do when we get the axle in there, we're gonna go back to full droop before we put the shock back on. And we're gonna see if it binds. As you can see right now, we are not binding. So we're good. But if you look, I mean, the CV is pretty much almost maxed out. So I went ahead and I pulled the driver's side, and I've actually already done it over here. I just need to put the rim and tire back on and then torque down the lug nuts. But before I proceeded any further, I wanted to show you the difference in the 2 axles. So again, the axle nut on the Super ATV is new. It does look a little bit beefier. I mean, look at the flange here versus there. The splines are obviously going to be the same. I am putting new axle nuts on. So here's your shaft. So as you can see, this is neck down just a little bit. And then same thing over here, your locking ring. So I will put some grease on both sides. But if you look, look at how far I can bend that. And this one, not near as much. I don't know how well the camera's showing it. So there's that one. That's all I can get it. Then this one, it's obviously very easy. So we move the wheel, the shock. So next thing we need to do is move the 17mm nut on the ball joints. And we're also going to remove the tie rod. I'm going to grab that extra jack stand over there and place it underneath here to make my life just a little bit easier. Support it. Give it a good tug. So I've already gone ahead, put a little grease on both sides, and this goes back together the same way you took it apart. Be careful not to overextend this brake line. Line it up. Splines lined up. So once you get the axle engaged, go ahead and feed it through your hub. I'm going to start this castle nut but leave it there. I'm going to go ahead and do everything in reverse. So make sure your brake lines are routed correctly, and do the ball joint first. Once you get your cotter pin and your ball joint, go ahead and put your tie rod back on. Once you get your tie rod put on, make sure you torque it down to the correct foot-pounds, along with your axle nut, and put the cotter pin in your axle nut. Let me get that done real quick. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you, without the shock on, what full droop looks like. So if you go ahead and remove the jack stand, at full droop, all the way down, these axles are not binding. I can feel they're wanting to. We're pretty close to a bind zone, but with the stock axles, you know, it was popping up to do that. So look at the angle. I don't know if the camera's showing you from there, the angle that this is at. So that just shows you the amount of droop you have. The other thing is, when you turn it to full lock, I can just feel it starting to bind. Now when we pick it up, put this bolt in. So the stock shock at full lock, we're not binding at all. Let's go the other way. Full lock here, and we're not binding, and look at that angle. So I'm going to go ahead and get this torqued down, and we'll get the wheels back on. So that's it for today's video. I went ahead, I got the tires put back on. So this is a really easy install. You can do it in 15 minutes per side if you got the right tools. You really don't need that many. You need a pair of needle nose pliers with some new cotter pins. I like some side cutters also. You need a 17mm wrench, not a socket, a wrench, maybe a Ritchie ratchet or ratcheting wrench. That'll work too. And that's for the shock bolts, the upper A-arm ball joint, and the tie rod. Other than that, you gotta have your lug nut tool to take the lugs off, and a 30mm socket for the axle nut. That's it. I've gone ahead, like I said, I got the wheels back on, I got everything torqued down. I'm gonna save the factory axles. So if you just look here, I have them labeled driver and passenger side. Remember, your Super ATV Rhino axles have a 1-year warranty, and they were not binding at full droop. I could feel we were right there in the bind zone, but I had to bring them up an inch anyways because the shocks are 20 inches from eyelet to eyelet, so we're there good. And it didn't bind in the turns, and that was the main reason, is I did not want to lose turning radius putting steering stops in. I still need to be careful with the skinny pedal when I am in 4-wheel drive or 4-lock turning, but I typically drive in turf mode. Even off-road, I'm in turf mode, and so I really need to lock up the rear end. And the only time I've ever really needed this thing in 4-wheel drive is out at the dunes. I've already got my trip planned for this year. It's a few months away come October, so I've got, 8 months or so, 7 months, but it'll be fun. So don't forget to give me a big thumbs up if you like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave me a comment below on what you think of the progress of my buggy, and until next time.